Yani tabutani samagatani bhumani vayani va antalike tathagatam deva manusa pujitam buddhang namasama suati hotu Dhammang namasama suati hotu Sangam namasama suati hotu. There's so many views and opinions about what's correct meditation. It's the whole path. So I'm going to start from, what do we want? What do we want in life? We don't want to suffer. We don't want pain. We want pleasant. We want friendship. We want connection. We want happiness. What does happiness mean? What is this happiness? Meditation has been a long, long time in existence. It's a very ancient practice. So ancient. Even before the Buddha, before anybody, there was meditation. I think that in our society, it's the culmination of many, many centuries of society building from the time that beings lived as hunter-gatherers. Little by little, as we started settling down and living in dwellings and separating out and ownership, control, and trying to have enough food, enough clothing to keep warm, some kind of medicine when we're sick, not to suffer the ills of the body. There were times when people could find rest or simple joys of singing or chanting or creating distractions from the toil of the life. Our society is very complex compared to that. So complex. And then religion gets introduced. And religion is a formalized spirituality. And I think perhaps early religions were more animistic. When you look at the indigenous cultures, they have powerful ways of connecting themselves to the earth, the elements, and to a spirituality that would govern their life. And we've become very distant from that, very, very distant. But still, even in this complex society, people go to this form of spirituality through conventions and techniques. Then we get attached to our conventions and to our techniques. And around a convention, people gather and say, this is right, this works. And somewhere else, they'll say, this is right, and this works, not that. And again, the world becomes more and more complex. And the more complex we grow, the less we have the ability to connect, to correct anything. Because we want to be right. We want to get it right. When what is right is already there. But we're so worried about what is right that we lose touch with what is there already within us. We divide it up. Which one is right? Where should I go? I remember years ago when I was working as a laywoman in Nepal, and I was a meditator. This is back in the 80s. I wanted to know more about Tibetan Buddhism. So, because I'd been introduced to meditation, and it was in the Theravada convention. So I went to a place where they were having a group of people come to learn Tibetan way of practice. And I stood outside the building for a long time. I just stood there. Should I? No. I just couldn't make up my mind. I was so confused. I'd already had 2 excellent teachers, and they used 2 very different approaches. And then here I was in a different country which had this marvelous, colorful, splendid way of practice. And I was curious, and I thought, well, I'll just learn that. I didn't know if I really needed to learn anything else. And I decided not to. Years later, I did more reading and understood more about Tibetan Buddhism, but I didn't learn the techniques. I didn't study it like that. I just went back more and more to what I originally learned from my first teacher, who was my mother. She taught me the meaning of love. She taught me that people can try to kill you, take everything away from you that you ever had, make you run for your life, eat herbs in the forest, starve but don't die. She stayed alive. She never stopped loving. She was love, inexplicable love. And she wanted to learn how to meditate. But I didn't feel that I could actually teach her anything, because whenever I happened to walk in when she was alone or see her, we would go to the country and see her in nature alone. I just felt that she was so spiritual that I couldn't teach her anything. Because all I would be teaching her is a technique. I didn't know that that was my hesitation. But looking back, I realized she was so at one with her spirit. And she had so much forgiveness, so much love. I wanted that. And I felt that I had to learn that. And of course, I kept practicing meditation techniques. But I had a glimpse of where these techniques might lead us. And I think if we could learn that quality of unbounded love, no one can beat that out of you. And no one can teach you that. You can't learn it with a technique. Every technique will become an attachment. And we think that only if we do that can we learn how to love unconditionally. But that love is within us already. We just have to give up our fear. We have to give up our wanting to be somebody that everyone loves. are wanting people to be nice to us, always, perfectly, unstoppably. To be honored, to be treasured, and never hurt us. We practice these beautiful practices to return to the understanding of what we really are. So to do that, we have to unravel a lot of conditioning that we've received from growing up, from parents, from going to school, from teachers, from having a job, from colleagues, from being bullied, from society, from money, from feeling that that's the answer, and being so misled. In the same time period, when I didn't go into the Tibet house, I had been offered a job, and this job was very good paying. And I took that job over another job which didn't pay as well, but it was much more hands-on. I worked with families, undernourished families in developing countries. So I took this job with the United Nations. My employers had good intentions, but they were so misdirected because a lot of them, I think, took the job because it paid so well. And I worked with people born and raised there. Their pay was 1/10 of what we were paid, 1/10. But they were taking advantage. So a lot of the money that was meant for projects for the poorest of the poor was siphoned into another car, fancier furniture, trips. I was so distraught at what was going on with my colleagues that I realized I can't do this job. I want to go back to my former job, which was with a small company. Luckily, I went to Burma and I went on retreat. I found the Dhamma. I didn't want to work for compromise. I wanted to work honestly. But with the Dhamma, the difference was the quotient. The quotient is the dividing thing. It was 0. There was nothing to divide. You were looking for the truth, and you were looking in your heart, and you were going to the silence to listen and to find out, to discover, who am I? What is this being? What is it? And we had to do this by using a technique which helped to trick the mind so that instead of thinking, you were just being present, just being aware. Instead of figuring things out through your brain, you had to let go everything that had always worked for you before and just be present, be aware, and listen, and listen, and listen. Eventually, there is no technique. There's just listening to the silence. And when listening to the silence, all the garbage comes up. All the conditioning is plainly seen. There's just awareness. And one knows, little by little, this is true, this is not true, this is false, this is true. And then you stick with truth, what is true. And the more you stay with the truth, the more joy arises. The more joy arises, the more joy we want. And then the wanting starts. I want more joy. Then when you want the more joy, you try to pick the part of the listening that gives you more joy. But when you give up the joy, you go to a deeper happiness. When you go to the deeper happiness, you feel so happy. But then eventually you cling to that happiness because this is what the mind does. So then you go more and more deeply and you look at where the happiness is coming from, and you reflexively understand the process of how that joy, how that happiness, and how that steadiness and unification of mind occurs. And you go more and more deeply into the mentality, into the process, until there's no more looking at the process and no more process. There's only a point of unification where they come together and there's nothing. There's no one and no thing. But the heart is knowing the love within itself. And it becomes vast. There is no one there to love. There is just pure love. So when there's just pure love, there's nothing to forgive anymore. The world does what it does. People do what they do. And one is not disturbed by that. But it's a bit like a ladder. You could say there are many ladders, but they all they seem to only go up, but they don't go up, they don't go anywhere, they go in. And then we find that the whole world is in the heart. It's all created from this, all of it. So we uncreate it. We come to that which doesn't create anymore. We might do that for a second, or for a time, or more and more, but then we flail, we get influenced, and we leave all that, and we get habituated back into some of our old conditioning. And we lose sight a little bit. But that which we were able to touch or know, even if it's for a moment, we always know that that's there and that's possible. So we keep coming back to that awareness and stilling the mind again and again so that we can live from that place of pure, unconditional love. And the world continues. But we bring that love forward if we can. We try. And then the life expires, the body disappears, and if we have been able to fully sustain awareness of that boundless love, then there's no more coming to be. Then there's a freedom from birth, from death, from pain, from suffering. But until that time, we work at it. It's like you're trying to build a house and you do it nail by nail. There's floor, then there's walls, There's a roof. Eventually the house is finished. You walk in, you sit down, and you're safe. Love is not a house, but it's what we are. And when we are in that love, there's no one that can be harmed. There never was a one that can be harmed, but we didn't know. We didn't think that the shelter we want is right here in the heart. It's not anywhere else. No one can steal that from us, even if they try. They might steal everything else. They might even kill us. But they cannot kill that love. So the techniques are like tools. You get a hammer, you get a crowbar, and different kinds of tools for different approaches to the building. But then, in the end, the way the Tibetans do, they create these fabulous mandalas with sand. Fabulous. And then they sweep them away. There's nothing left. But they were able to do it. They brought it to be. They have that skill, that kind of awareness. If we can be that present so deeply, so fully, it doesn't matter if the thing is there or not. We never lose it because we're aware of that within us. And whatever we create on the outside is only for a moment. It will all be destroyed. It's all impermanent. But that which is present for it, to know it, that knowing, that awareness, is the loving quality. It's that pure presence that knows. We are the mandala. Just be aware. Be as you are. You are already so beautiful. No need to dress it up. Don't hurry. Just being aware. Enjoy the goodness of your life and all the blessings of it. And be fully what you are. And it'll all just unfold like a flower. It has to. We just put in the causes and conditions, and it comes.
Hanmayan Dhammakataya Sadhu Karanta Dhammase Sadhu Sadhu